what does my dog miss out on if I feed vegetarian diet? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So now that we have covered all the nutrients through the whole food sources, right? Through different, like if you feed quinoa and lentils again should be fed in moderation. If you feed a little bit of soya chunks also, if you feed oats and you rotate between the different millets, if you go to an online retailer, you will find so many different kinds of millet. There is little millet, there's foxtail millet, there's finger millet, there's pearl millet, there's uh, jawar, there's barnyard millet, odo millet. There is no limit to how many millets are there. So what I have seen is dogs can digest jawar, ragi, foxtail millet, and little millet very, very well. So these are something that you can start with because they are not very high in fiber. So that is something easily digestible by them. But now the issue with vegetarian diets is bioavailability. So bioavailability means how much of the fraction of a particular nutrient your dog is actually able to digest. Like I told you about that study which was done on grain-free dog food, the dogs were not able to digest the protein properly. Like they were not able to break down the amino acids and absorb the amino acids properly through their intestine. So that led to dilated cardiomyopathy in dogs. So this is one of the issues in vegetarian diets, that even if you're feeding these different kinds of ingredients to your dog, which is great if you can able to do it, but there has not been any studies done as to how much of the fraction or percentage of that nutrient will actually be absorbed by your dog. And one of the reasons for it is the anti-nutrients in grain. So all the grains have anti-nutrients in them. I will tell you how to counter the anti-nutrients also, like how you can actually reduce or destroy the anti-nutrients completely. But so different kinds of these grains have different kinds of anti-nutrients. So I have actually given a list of the most common anti-nutrients, which are lectins, oxalates, phytates, goitrogens, phytoestrogens, tannins. It's a mouthful, but lectins are very, very high and commonly found in lentils, in that soya chunks that so many people like to feed their dogs, in peas, in beans, right? And these anti-nutrients, what they do is they will actually impair the absorption of important minerals which your dog need in their diet every single day. So lectins is one of such anti-nutrient which will create inflammation and impair absorption. Then oxalates is something you need to be very careful especially in vegetarian diets, because many of the vegetarian ingredients has oxalates and people are not even aware, and they feed those oxalates a lot, and then dogs develop kidney stones. So oxalates will form calcium oxalate kidney stones in your dog. So feed these foods in moderation. That is spinach, beetroot, beans, and sweet potatoes or potatoes. Feed these in moderation. Now, sweet potatoes and potatoes are not very high in oxalate, so that you can feed like maybe once or twice a week, or maybe more, but in moderation, of course, in a small quantity. But spinach is the highest in oxalates, and that's why even in my diet plans, if any of you have seen my diet plans, I do not add a lot of spinach. I also do not add beans at all, because there are many people who feed kidney beans and fava beans. There are different kinds of beans, but please don't feed it, because beans have actually 4 to 5 different kinds of anti-nutrients, and especially oxalate, which is not healthy at all, and it can lead to kidney stones if you feed it very frequently. So best to avoid beans. You don't need to feed beans. You can feed like other stuff like lentils and millets and all these things. Then beetroot also. So beetroot, spinach, please remember not to feed it in moderation, maybe once a week, little bit, 3 to 4 leaves of spinach, maybe, and just like 20 grams of beetroot is enough. You don't need to feed more than that. Then it is phytate. So lentils, millet, quinoa, take everything, any vegetarian ingredient on the planet, any grain has phytates, right? But we can counter all these anti-nutrients by soaking the lentils, by soaking the quinoa overnight. Even brown rice has anti-nutrients. So soak it overnight, and then in the morning cook it thoroughly, so that maybe like 60 to 70% of these phytates are destroyed. And phytates are a really like nasty anti-nutrient, because it will, even if you're feeding like such great diversity of food, for your dog. But if it is impaired because of these anti-nutrients, then there is no use, right? It will just come out like that in their dog food. So to counter these anti-nutrient effects, you need to destroy it completely. So soak it overnight, cook it thoroughly the next morning with a lot of water, especially the lentils, the quinoa, or the millet. If you do that, then most of the different anti-nutrients, phytates, lectins, whatever other we have mentioned, even goitrogens will be destroyed in a huge amount. So goitrogens is something that will impede the uptake of iodine. So if you're feeding goitrogenous vegetables like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, all these in high amount and that too raw. If you're feeding it raw, it will definitely impede iodine uptake and that will lead to hypothyroidism in your dog. It can also lead to some other form of parathyroidism issues or any other form of thyroid dysfunction. So always feed these vegetables completely cooked. And you can just, puree it, run through a blender, make a smooth paste so that it is properly absorbed and all the anti-nutrients are destroyed. Then phytoestrogens is another like huge stuff, which is an issue because soybean is high in phytoestrogens. That also it is a endocrine disruptor that will also lead to autoimmune disorders and thyroid issues. And endocrine is anything that is hormone related. So that is something that will be affected if you feed a lot of soya chunk, soya bean, or soy products, something even tofu, and these different kinds of things that people feed. So that also feed in moderation and then cook it thoroughly. Then tannins also berries and all have, but the same thing, if you cook it properly, then anti-nutrients will be destroyed. So, but not entirely, of course, there'll be some anti-nutrients, and that's why supplementing with minerals is always something I advise, so that even if some of it is lost during the absorption, then, the supplement will make up for that gap. This is very important because everything, any disease that will start for any mammal on this planet, it mostly starts in the gut. And many people who don't know about this phenomenon called leaky gut. So if you are able to see the picture on the left hand side, right, you will see tight junctions. Only the nutrients are passing through those tight junctions, and the pathogens, that is the bacteria that we spoke about in the beginning, the microbiome, right? So this is the intestine actually. So the pathogens, the bacteria, the viruses, the yeast, everything, it is remaining inside the gut, and only the nutrients are getting absorbed into the blood, which is ideal scenario, right? But what happens is if you are feeding certain kind of ingredients which are not great, which are not good for the dog's gut health, these tight junctions will actually become permeable and everything will leak through. Not just the nutrients that are being broken down into the intestine, but the pathogens, which are good, bad, everything will leak out in the blood, and it will be a situation of like sepsis. It will be an endotoxemia. It will be toxic. So if all of these toxins will be flowing through the blood into the organs, and it will affect different kinds of organs, and it will be like a systemic inflammation. So what happens is when there is a systemic inflammation, and when it happens continuously, so every time you feed your dog, all of these microorganisms will actually leak through in the blood and actually get transferred to different kinds of organs, and all the inflammation will be there in different kinds of organs. What will happen is eventually the organs will start like dysfunctioning. Your dog will have liver issues, your dog will have joint issues. Like I said, early on, dogs are getting joint issues like at the age of 3 and 4, which actually they should be getting at the age of 7 and maybe 8 when they get senior citizens. So this is one phenomenon which is very common with uh, both humans, dogs, and other mammals on this planet. So leaky gut is something we need to prevent before it even starts. Many dogs are gluten sensitive, right? They are also sensitive to lactose intolerant also. So if you feed gluten, that is wheat, chapati, which is very common in India, your dog's gut can become leaky. It can become completely like permeable to all the pathogens which should stay inside the gut, but are now circulating inside his entire body. Maybe you will not be able to see any form of specific sign or symptom outside the body. It will be like maybe he will look healthy. Maybe there'll be a dry coat or something. Sometimes he's pooping. Sometimes he's not pooping. Sometimes he's constipated. Sometimes he's they are loose stools or something, maybe some non-specific signs you will see, and you will feel maybe okay, it's just not, it's nothing. And maybe 1 or 2 year down the line, you will see autoimmune diseases developing. He will develop arthritis, or he will develop diabetes, or he will develop thyroid issues, and you will be wondering why did this happen, even when you fed like variety of food and everything. So you need to really make sure and pay attention to every ingredient that you're feeding, whether it is suiting your dog's gut. Particularly, don't feed the gluten related stuff like wheat, or even barley has a little bit of gluten. And second thing, don't feed um, milk to your dog, because there are many dogs who are who are lactose intolerant. So if they are not able to tolerate it, your dog's gut can become permeable to all these different pathogens, and it can lead to a lot of autoimmune diseases later on in life. Which, and at a point, what happens when the gut becomes leaky and it gets permeable, the gut will keep getting more and more and more permeable to a point where it will become irreversible, and all the toxins will be circulating in the body, with you will not be able to completely detoxify. So before your dog reaches to that stage where it is irreversible, just take a thorough look at what ingredients you're feeding, what anti-nutrients are present, how you can counter those anti-nutrients by like soaking up the grains overnight, cooking, and then if it has gluten, if it doesn't have gluten, feed low to moderate glycemic index food only. If you Google it, you'll find all the low to moderate glycemic index food list. So you can pick from that. You can feed the protein rich food so that your dog has, healthy muscles and organs and everything.